Hello, welcome to this overview of the summary assignment in English 101 for our section BL05. This PowerPoint is being brought to you by the icy road conditions of our morning weather. So basically this is what we were going to be covering in class today. I didn't want us to fall behind, and so I'm prepared this short video to try and cover just a general introduction to this summary assignment. Now, before you watch this, as before you came to class, your assignment was to read the assignment sheet for the paper. That was part of your homework today, and also to watch the text that we'll be using for summary, the Liz Coleman TED Talk. If you've had any problem finding that, let me point it out to you. If you look at our ELMS page and you're under Course Modules, the assignment sheet is the first item here, Summary Final. Go ahead and open it, and you will see the assignment sheet itself, which looks like this. So I want to talk a little bit about the summary assignment first, and then I'll talk a little bit more specifically about Liz Coleman's talk. So in class on Friday, we talked some about what defines academic writing. And one thing that we noted was that while academic writing isn't really limited in what's being discussed, so there's no limitation really in terms of content, what kinds of things academics write about, it is really shaped by how the discussion happens. And we talked about one of the most significant characteristics of academic writing being that it always reflects joining in a conversation. And I noted that that would be an important metaphor for us, that we would come back to it again and again in class. Joining the conversation, as we discussed, means being aware of what has been said before about a topic and demonstrating that you've listened to those ideas, to all those ideas that preceded you. And one way that we demonstrate that we've listened is to put our ideas in the context of others, right? And that's one thing that we call research. It's not independent individual research, but it's the research that looks back at what's come before. So the first key to really providing good context for a conversation is having read what came before us critically. Not cruelly, not looking for errors, but critically, in the sense that what we read, that we've read something thoroughly and seek to really understand what's been said. So in that sense, I hope you can understand why we're doing summary as our first assignment. So again, the notion that academic writing is always joining a conversation. Joining a conversation always involves figuring out what's been said before, and the real key here is critical listening or reading to inform yourself about a topic. So you may recall that in class on Friday, I showed you a brief bit of video, this video here, about the Burkean parlor.
Imagine that you enter a parlor. You come late. When you arrive, others have long preceded you, and they are engaged in a heated discussion. A discussion too heated for them to pause and tell you exactly what it is about.
In fact, the discussion had already begun long before any of them got there, so that no one present is qualified to retrace for you all the steps that had gone before.
You listen for a while until you decide that you have caught the tenor of the argument. Then you put in your oar. Someone answers. You answer him. Another comes to your defense. Another aligns himself against you, to either the embarrassment or gratification of your opponent, depending upon the quality of your ally's assistance.
However, the discussion is interminable. The hour grows late. You must depart. And you do depart, with the discussion still vigorously in progress.
So that quotation, which is generally often referred to as the Burkean parlor, is which comes from Kenneth Burke's Philosophy of Literary Forms, is repeated on your assignment sheet, and I've excerpted it here, but it's right there on your assignment sheet. So if we think about what the goal of summary is, and here I've gone back to your assignment sheet, really we can talk about the goal of summary as being a demonstration that you understand the text that you refer to. You really want to show your readers, when you do writing, that you have a good understanding of whatever speaker you're referring to. And I've pointed this out on our assignment sheet too, right? This first paragraph here. The ability to write an effective argument might be the most important writing skill a college student can possess. You need to be able to summarize before you can be successful at most of the other kinds of writing that'll be demanded of you in college. for Burke, for that quotation about the Burkean parlor. Listening and understanding has to occur before you dip your oar into the conversation. And in this class, we'll really be taking Burke's advice. Later, we'll move on to analysis, synthesis, and response. But for this first assignment, we are going to stick with summary. So that's an important thing to note there, that we're characterizing summary as something very distinct from analysis, from synthesis, from response. That is, before you analyze a text, before you take a position on it, or really at least before you do those things well, I'd say, you really have to be able to summarize it well and to demonstrate that you really understood what an author was saying. All right, so obviously you can read the assignment sheet itself, and I hope it's pretty straightforward. Anything that's not, please feel free to ask me questions about. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the reading itself, the text that we're going to use. So as I mentioned, we're going to use a text that's Liz Coleman's TED Talk. That's the subject of our summary. Everybody's going to write on the same text. As I mentioned in class on Friday, I've selected a theme for the class. Education is the overall theme. And my reasoning here was pretty straightforward. I think it's often easier to be motivated about writing when you write about what's familiar or engaging. And often a community of writers can develop better when they have some kind of shared context. So since you're all here at college and you've spent your lives at school, my assumption is that education is a subject that you have knowledge about, personal knowledge, I'm assuming, and something I hope you care about. So that's why I've selected it. And as I also mentioned in class on Friday, I'm leaving it really broad. We'll bring up lots of topics in education. And in fact, the questions that you gave me in class on Friday, I'm going to do something more with shortly. I'll show you that in a subsequent class. But that's we're going to start with this really broad topic of college. All right, so having picked a subject, I wanted to use a TED Talk as material for our first assignment. And I wanted to use a TED Talk. Again, I'll explain my reasoning. A TED Talk is a lecture. It's not like a lecture. It is a lecture. You sit through a lot of lectures, so I thought that this would be a good exercise in both listening and reading. We have both a transcript of the talk, of Liz Coleman's talk, and you can listen to it. So whichever is the better way for you to take information in, or some combination of both maybe works well for you, you have access to both. Well, but what is a TED Talk? Maybe you've never heard of one before and never seen one before. So what's TED and what's a TED Talk? So here's TED's explanation of what they are, and they tell us right here what they are. Here's their explanation. TED's a nonprofit devoted to ideas worth spreading. It started out in 1984 as a conference bringing together people from three worlds: technology, entertainment, design. That's where the acronym comes from. So TED as an organization seeks to help people access ideas and information. They hold real live conferences where speakers speak to real live audiences, and then they record those talks and make them available free online. TED Talks have become a really common part of higher education in lots of ways. They allow teachers to bring in voices from across the world on an interesting variety of subjects. So that's what a TED Talk is, so you have a little familiarity with that. And then the one I selected is this talk by Liz Coleman on a liberal arts education. And again, just so that you know how to find it, obviously you could search on TED itself. But again, it's on modules for us. I like to change the colors here. So you've looked at the summary assignment. The schedule we'll come back to in a minute. Most of you have done the Habits of an Academic Mind viewing and reading and writing. But here's the TED Talk right here. So if you click on this link, you will go to Liz Coleman's TED Talk. And you'll see Liz Coleman. But there are a lot of TED Talks about different aspects of education. So why did I select this one? Well, I liked Liz Coleman's talk because it raises a lot of questions. I also liked it because she starts with some personal narrative. She starts by telling a story about why she's telling this, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in class on Friday. And I also picked it because I think some of you will agree with what she has to say about education, and some of you will disagree, which I think makes it a good topic for our discussion. I want to warn you, however, that the talk is not easy. She's talking about reinventing a liberal arts education, so you need to know what that means, and I'll come back to that in a second. She's using fairly formal diction here. She assumes her audience to be educated, and she's using a language that reflects that assumption. So I've given you both a link to the talk, and you can find the transcript from that link, or I've also created a document with that transcript. I've numbered paragraphs so that we'd have a common way to talk about it, and that also is on modules. So I mentioned that Liz Coleman's talk is about liberal arts education. Well, what exactly does that mean? Let me give you some context there. I'll give you my definition. There are lots of other definitions out there. You could Google the word and see what comes up. But my definition is that a liberal arts education is a college education that focuses on critical thinking in the more traditional or humanities-based majors, literature, history, philosophy, science, economics. So, for instance, if you're an engineering major or a kinesiology major or a business major, you are not pursuing a liberal arts education. Well, that's not exactly true. The general education program that you're all required to complete while you're here at Maryland is in part a liberal arts education. So the gen ed requirements try to replicate to some degree this liberal arts education, the mindset. But if your major is outside of these more traditional fields, then you're kind of getting a combination college education, a little bit liberal arts, but largely focused on something else. We could see Merriam-Webster's definition. Let me see both where it comes from and then their definition: college or university studies intended to provide chiefly general knowledge and to develop general intellectual capacities, reason and judgment, as opposed to professional or vocational skills. So that's an important distinction, the general intellectual capacity versus professional or vocational skill. Now, liberal arts colleges tend to be a lot smaller than Maryland is. Colleges such as Bennington College, where Liz Coleman is the president, or St. Mary's College in Southern Maryland, where perhaps some of you considered going. The idea of a liberal arts education is often under fire, especially these days. People really question its value and its relevance in our 21st century world. So that's part of why I thought Liz Coleman's talk, though it's challenging, would be a good one to think about. All right, I think I've probably worn out your patience for watching a PowerPoint video, so let's check in about what else you need to do to proceed with summary. This schedule for summary. Now that, if you were to click on that, you would see this document where I put everything, all the dates, and what you're doing. So for instance, here we are. For today, I asked you to read the assignment sheet and watch Liz Coleman's talk, the quiz, which isn't actually due until the 4th, and I'll get up there later today. And then for Wednesday, okay, for the day that we don't meet, I asked you to watch it again and post some responses onto a page that I have created on Elms, and then to comment on some work of classmates too. And then finally for Friday, to read another reading that's up under modules, Joe Harris's Rewriting, to watch a short video that I've made previously on Harris's main points, if that's helpful for you, and then also to post a 50-word summary of the Coleman on the page that's there. Make sure you see that, because that's the other important writing that's due on Friday. That last piece. So you have a couple of things of writing to do, some reading and some writing before we meet again on Friday. Now, this summary I was trying to figure out where to put it. I was actually going to print it out and give you a hard copy of this and the assignment sheet in class today, but obviously since we didn't have class, I didn't do that. So I did want to do something else, and what I did was link it right here on our home page. So this last, if you go back to the home page, this last thing here, schedule for the summary, will bring you to this document right here. And again, I'm sorry, I was going to make it clear by giving it to you in hard copy, but it's there as well. And I'm open to suggestions about where the best place to put that is. I think once we get used to Elms and how I've laid things out, that everything basically go to modules first and go from there, that'll be helpful. But feel free to start telling me what you want in hard copy, what you don't. So there are all the assignments, and I'm happy to answer any kind of questions. about any of that. Again, because this is a blended learning class, we won't meet on Wednesday. Hopefully there won't be any problems on Friday, no weather problems. So I will see you on Friday. I'm in the office, however, every day this week. I'm in my office right now if you're watching this before 4 o'clock on any given day. So feel free to come and talk to me if you have any questions, or of course you can email me either at my direct email address or through the Elm site. You can send me a note. Thanks for your patience, and I look forward to actually seeing you again on Friday.